I feel like a lot of times, especially in like American culture, Western culture, and there's positives and negatives to this, but I do think there's a lot of negatives. I think the positives start to kick in once you've established kind of a literacy for the form that you're working within.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the negatives, I'm not saying you haven't established a literacy in some of the things you talked about, but I do think that, you know, pursuing any kind of and this is just my opinion. I just want to lay that out, and I'll get into a point of that also with what you said, but we tend to, in America, we tend to view things on this scale of like not good and great. And some of the examples you laid out, Steven Spielberg and Alex Soth and Bruce Springsteen, like, I think, you know, even that is such a highly subjective group of people. Like, you and I agree on a lot of things, and I wouldn't put, you know, I have respect for all three of those people's work. I wouldn't put any of them on, you know, my personal whatever Mount Rushmore, whatever you want to call it. And I typically think it's not a useful exercise to come up with a Mount Rushmore, and it always kind of makes me just like it makes me feel a little strange inside when I hear people, you know, this person's the greatest of all time, or this person's the GOAT.
Yeah.
This is the best to ever do it. I think you can strive towards excellence in craft. But I think for any artistic pursuit, the pursuit shouldn't be this perceived greatness that's more of a mimicry of somebody who you idolize.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be this vertical line that you're trying to get to the top of, because that's all, it's just iconography at the end of the day, where it's something where this, you know, it's easier for us to say this person is the greatest and everybody else falls below that, or like that's a very commercially viable idea. Yeah. But I think when you get into it, there's so many, you could be unheard of. And if you're making some kind of art that is unique to you and that is self-realized, I guess, and it's not copying somebody else, then I think that's quote unquote great work. Like, you've achieved something that very few people have achieved.
Yeah.
There are certain things where it is easier to measure quote unquote greatness, like the fastest man alive. Like, you know, Usain Bolt is the fastest man to ever run that race, so he's therefore the greatest. I don't think that translates to art, though.
No.
In my opinion. And I think a lot of people like to think it does. And a lot of, you know, a lot of things in the world will tell you that it does because it's very commercially appealing to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's almost a trap that people get caught in.
Sure.
And it can stop somebody like you from just doing it. Just like, oh, I love this. And you kind of already are. Like, this is an example of you kind of exploring something that's unique to you. Your space is a project that you're working on right now that is an art project. Your grandfather's studio was, you know, his representation of, you know, his work in a lot of ways. And I don't think, you know, while you might not think that's Spielbergian or whatever, it's its own little form of, I guess, greatness. But I think there's, in America, it's really useful to have, you know, hard work equals success equals greatness. And while I think, you know, if you're doing something that you love, if you want to make films and you've discovered, you know, you've just kept going and kept going, and you've worked and you've discovered your own pocket, your own vision of the world, and you're, you know, constantly exploring, how can I express that better? How do I see things? How can I get that down? How can I put that into the world?
Yeah.
It does take hard work.
Yep.
You know, it is very, very much it's a difficult process, as with photography, music, anything that you strive to do. But it's not like that, you know, it's not as much of a hunker down and do the hard work and you can be the I just don't think that's a very useful framework. Like get underneath, get into the weeds, get into the hard work, and just keep going. And, you know, you can, it's useful in some things, but it's not useful in others. And I think art is. I know I'm just circling around.
No, yeah.
Because this is something that's I'm trying to put into words
Sure.
right now.
Yeah, I just dumped this on you, and yeah.
But yeah, I tend to think that because I used to see a lot of the world in terms of like greatness and I think there's, you know, excellence in execution, and there's, you know, keeping a tight ship, and there's executing at a high level, and, you know, being open, and there's like factors that can go into creating great work, and some of those things have to be present to create, you know, work that is truly yours. But I think it's too much of a reductive framework to just say like, oh, I'm going to work hard and I'm going to achieve greatness.
I don't think
and I think it's not useful.
No.
I think it's very, because, you know, you're looking at your dad's experience, not writing past his 20s as a failure.
I'm wondering if it's
a failure. Yeah. And I think like you're looking at that through the perspective of your kind of, you know, internal,
right,
I guess, conflict with your own writing.
Well, and again, like when someone like Bruce Springsteen says, like, you know, I just want, you know, to make great work, right? He's not thinking about fame and fortune. He's not thinking about some fantasy life. He's not thinking about anything ego. He's thinking about how do I take how I feel and what I think and the music I hear in my mind, and how do I like craft something that is, you know, and he probably doesn't think about it like that, but I think he's like uncompromising. Like I'm not going to hang this up right now because it's not right. It's not there. And that doesn't mean that you don't have a moment where you call a song good and you still think, you know, well, we could have done this, or I wonder if we would have tried that. You're always going to maybe second guess whether it was truly done or not. But there's something in these people that I am talking about where I'm not necessarily talking about the life that they have as a result of making great work. I'm talking about their tenacity. And that's not to say that they never struggled, or maybe there was a moment where Bruce or Alex was like, you know, I want to be done today and I just want to watch some TV or something like that. But there's just something where they're just sort of relentless in improving and doing more, and nothing is going to stop them.
Well, there's like a clarity that some people have.
Yeah.
And I think some people, I don't think it's, that's the problem with like trying to mimic these people that you hold high regard for, is some of them just see things like they're not interested in doing anything other than that one thing, which is, it attributes the level of, you know, literacy that they are able to achieve with their medium or their art form. But also I think just an important note to make of what you just said is like his definition of greatness isn't the same as yours. When he's saying like, I want to make something great, and it's really easy to conflate the two and be like, he's talking about greatness and this is how I look at greatness, and that's the same. But, you know, I would wager most of these people, they have their own definition
their
of
own
greatness.
Understanding. Absolutely.
If they're being interviewed and it's just like a public, like they're probably not pushing harder to be like, what is your understanding of that word?
Right.
Just so people that are listening. And so it's very easy to just be like, oh, he means greatness. And greatness is like being the best. And like, I think a lot of those guys at the top of their art forms, or who have achieved a level of like fluency and mastery of like whatever that is, they're not, again, their greatness is, wow, I was able to get such a clear, you know, inside out, like understanding of, you know, how I see the world.
Yeah.
And how can I achieve that again?
Right.
What is the level of technique that I have to employ to achieve something close to that again?
Yeah.
But it's easy to just be like, to kind of reduce it down into, you know, grind, great.
It had been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer and summer.